In this one, we'll be rigging the character we made in a previous video, so if you want to follow along, you should start with that one. Here's a summary of what I'll cover in this video. First, I'm going to prepare our model for rigging by adding in more loop cuts at bending spots like the elbows and knees, making sure our mesh is dense enough, and also moving some things around to avoid complicated weight painting later on. Next, we'll start creating our armature while I go over some of the viewing options and basic rigging concepts like bone relationships, bone roll, and naming conventions. Once we make all the deforming bones, I'll move on to creating some simple IK controllers and other bones that make posing our character more fun and easy. After that, I'll use the simple renaming panel add-on to rename our bones, so when we copy them to the other side, they all have the proper names. This might seem like a small detail, but I'll explain why it's actually a big deal. With our armature completed, we can parent our character to it to make it deform. We'll touch up some spots with weight painting, and we'll finish off by talking about posing a little. As always, I'll try to address common problems along the way, and before we get started, I'd like to mention that I don't consider myself an expert when it comes to this stuff. I'm still very much in the process of getting better with character modeling, rigging, and animating, so expect more videos on this in the future. I've watched a bunch of tutorials on these topics, digested them, mixed concepts together, and experimented a lot, to get to the point where I feel like I can actually explain this to you. If you're interested in the videos that helped me out, I put a short list in the description. Alright, let's get started. Alright, so here we are in Blender 2.92, and we have the character here that we modeled in a previous video. So first, I am just going to set a few things up. First thing I am going to do is switch into solid mode right here. And I'm also going to get rid of these colors by clicking this button right here and going to Object right here. So now everything's just gray. And I also want to turn wireframe on over here under Overlays. You can just check this box right here, and you can change the opacity a little. I'm just going to turn mine around halfway like that, so we can see all of our points. Next thing I'm going to do is go over here to Render Properties, and down under Simplify, I'm going to turn this on and change the max subdivisions to 0. And so basically what this is doing is looking at anything that has a subdivision surface modifier and making it so that in the viewport, when you're looking at it, it is not active. I click on the vest right here and go over to modifier properties. It's kind of like coming over to the subdivision surface modifier and making it so that you can't see it in the viewport, but it's doing that for like everything in the scene. I like doing this for a few reasons. One is because it speeds up your viewport. One other reason is that when we get to the point where you actually parent your character to an armature and it sets all of the weights automatically, the weights that it uses are from the original like vertex data before the subdivision surface modifier. So I like to know, especially when you're weight painting, where all of the original points are, and it's pretty easy to just toggle on and off like this. The next thing I'm going to do is straighten this arm out right here. And this isn't 100% necessary. You can totally rig it with it bent like this. But when I tried that, I was running into a few problems where when you straightened it out, it wasn't really deforming in a very clean way. And so to avoid complicated weight painting, I think it'll just be better to straighten this out. And it's pretty easy too. We can just select our mesh, go into edit mode right here with tab. And basically what I'm going to do is start deleting loops in between here where it bends. So I'm going to make sure I'm in face select mode right here, or you can hit 3 and hit Alt Shift, and you can start selecting loops like this. I'm just selecting ones that are not really very parallel like that. And once I have all these selected, I'm just going to delete them like that. I can select this piece right here with L, and I'm just going to rotate this and try to make it so it's kind of straight along with this part. And so it might be easier if I turn on X-ray right here, and I'm also going to go into edge mode. And I'm basically just going to compare the two center lines like that. Just move it around until you get it close. So that is pretty close. Then I'm just going to put it over here. So I think that would be a good length for the arms right there. So I'm going to come in again in edge select mode right here. I'm going to Alt Shift and click to grab this edge loop right here and also this one right there, and right click, and I want to choose bridge edge loops, and that should connect these two parts. Then I'm going to use Control R to add in a loop cut so that these face sizes are more consistent. So I think that will be okay. Okay, now that I did that, I am going to add some loop cuts where the joints should be. So I'm going to put them for the elbows, the shoulders, and the knees. Just going to figure out where I should put the elbow, maybe this loop right here. So I'm just going to select that and Control B to bevel. And you can use the scroll wheel on your mouse to add in more loops like that. I'm just going to space it apart. That looks good. Go into X-ray mode with Alt Z. I'm going to add one in right here too. So I select that, bevel again, and just make sure you don't have the points overlap because it'll mess things up quite a bit. So I'm just going to get it close. That should be good. And I'm also going to do the same thing for the knee. Hit 3 on the numpad to look on the side, and I'll just bevel that also. So that looks okay. So I'm just going to hit tab to go back into object mode, and I'm going to select our vest right here. So what I'm going to do next is take our vest and make it more dense. And when I say dense, what I'm doing basically is looking for the sizes of the faces. So you can see, if you look at the wireframe of our vest, this face is really big right now. And if we compare that to the size of our faces on our body, they are very different. So I am basically just going to try to get them to be close to the same size. Easy way to do that, because we already have a subdivision surface modifier on here. I'm going to select this, turn off simplify, and then with that still selected, go over here to modifiers, and I want to turn off optimal display. And when you do that, it will allow you to see all of the faces that are actually being added by this modifier right here. Now that we have that, and we can actually see it, I'm just going to turn down the levels right here until the face sizes between the vest and the body are similar. So I think at around 2, they are pretty close. You can see a line right here for the body, right there. And if you compare that to the vest, they're pretty similar. So once we have that, I'm just going to apply this right here. And if you want to smooth this back out, you can just add in another subdivision surface modifier on top. So I just hit Control 2 to add that in, and now it's a little smoother. Okay, so I'm just going to turn Simplify back on. One other thing we should do before creating the armature is we need to fix this foot right here. At first glance, you might not notice what is wrong, but if we move the head right here, you'll see that it moves the foot also. And so if I were to rig this up, whenever we move the head, the foot is going to move also, and we don't want that. The reason that is happening is because when we select our foot and we look at the mirror modifier, you can see that it's using the head as a mirror object. So I'm just going to clear that like this, and you can see it immediately messes our foot up. And that's because when you're not using a mirror object, you don't have one selected, it's looking at the origin point and using that as like the reference for where to mirror. So I just want to make sure our 3D cursor is in the center. And if yours isn't, you can hit Shift S, cursor to world origin like that. And I'm just going to right click our shoe, set origin to 3D cursor. Now you can see it's mirroring based on the origin, but these are angled kind of weird, and that's because we don't have our rotation applied right here. So you can, change that like this. If you wanted to clear it and just have your feet be straight, you could just hit Alt R like that. But I want our feet to be angled outward. I just like the way that looks, and I've rigged it before that way and it worked fine. So to apply this, you would just hit Control A and apply rotation, and that will fix that for you and make it symmetrical. So with these things done, we can start setting up our armature. So I'm just going to hit 1 on our numpad to go to front view right here. And I'm going to hit Shift A to add in an armature. I'm going to choose single bone. So you can see it added a single bone in the center right here, but it's going through our character. So we should talk a little about viewing options. So with that selected, you can come over here to object data properties. It looks like a little running person. And under viewport display, you have these display options. So you can change the shape of your bone right here. I'm going to leave mine as octahedral. And you can also select in front. When you do that, this bone will always appear as if it's in front of your mesh. And I'm going to turn on axes and names. So now we can go into edit mode and we can start moving our bone around. So for this, I'm just going to go into X-ray mode again. And I'm going to grab the head of our bone, which is the fat end, and the skinnier end is called the tail. And one thing to remember is when you're posing your character, it's always going to pivot from the head right here, and that'll come in handy more later. So I'm just going to grab the head right here and just pull that up right there. So like this is going to be near where our hips are. The tail I am going to put between the shoulders right there. And you can just hit E to extrude and then Z to constrain on the Z axis. I'm going to drag that up to about the neck, and then E to extrude, Z to the top of the head right there. Going to add in our shoulder. That's going to go between those loop cuts that we made right there. I'm going to extrude again to our elbow. Once again, between those loop cuts. Extrude again to go to where we want the wrist to bend. Okay, now we're going to work on the hand. We can just extrude that right there. This is going to control like our entire hand. So I'm going to extrude again and select this bone right here and hit Alt P. And I want to disconnect the bone like that. So now you can see we can disconnect it And if you look closely, there's this black dotted line, and that's a relationship line. That means that this bone is parented to this bone. So this is the child of that bone. And when you go into pose mode up here, what that means is that when you move the parent bone, the children of that bone are going to follow it like that. We'll go back into edit mode now, and I just want to place these for the fingers. And once again, remember that these bones pivot from the head. So you want to put these bones where the knuckles would go, like that. And you can just place this one at the tip of the finger. You can select it from the middle and hit Shift D to duplicate. And I'll just start placing these around where the knuckles would be. And then place the tails at the tip of the finger, like that. Take your time with this. You don't have to rush. Duplicate this again for the thumb and drag this over. Okay, that looks good. Now we can select all of these finger bones right here, and we can subdivide them by right-clicking and hitting subdivide. And I want these to be 3 bones each. So in this dialog box that popped up right here, you can just turn that up to 2. So it's cutting it twice. We have 3 bones per finger. I'm going to do the same thing for the thumb, except I'm going to leave it as 2 bones. Okay. Then I am going to select this spine right here and subdivide that once also. You can subdivide this more if you want to. Okay. Next, I'm going to work on the legs. So I'm going to grab this and extrude it to where I think the leg should bend. And then I'm going to extrude this down to the knee and look from the side so I can line this up properly. And extrude this down to where the bottom of the leg goes. Okay, then I'm going to extrude this to where the toe bends right there in the center, and another one for the tip of the toe. You might have to rotate this. You could, like I have been doing, just select each part and drag them over like that. Or another way to do it is select both of these bones like that. And you're going to want to make sure that this is the last one you select. You can see it's brighter. And you can hit period to change the pivot point to active element. And when you do that and rotate it, it will pivot at the head of the actively selected bone. And that just makes it easier like that, so these bones will still be straight. Another thing you can do is just select one of your bones and hit N to open the side panel. And under item, you have this length option, and you can do that to change the length. And you don't have to be in active object or active element mode for that. So now we have this bone right here that you can leave it there if you want to, but I don't really think it's necessary for our character specifically, so I'm going to delete it. Another thing is that this bone is not really parented to anything, and I want to parent it to this bone right here, this first spine bone. To do that, you would select the leg bone, then select this spine right here and hit Control P, and you want to choose Keep Offset. When you do that, you'll see that relationship line. If instead you did Connected, it will actually move the bone to make them connected. And obviously that messes up our skeleton, so I don't want to do that. Just make sure you use Keep Offset. So now I'm going to talk about axes, and this is the reason why I have the axes displayed, is because I like our x-axis right here. I like that to act as sort of a hinge that we know the joint will naturally pivot upon. You totally don't have to do this, but I think it is a good habit to get into, and it makes posing a lot easier, because when you hop into pose mode, it allows you to just select any bone and know that it's going to act the way you want if you pivot it on the x-axis. So you can just hit R and then X twice to go on the local axis, and it'll rotate along that axis right there. And you can see right now, this is not like natural leg movement. To rotate these, make sure you're back in edit mode. You can hit the N side panel right here, and there's this roll option. If you want to roll multiple bones at the same time, it's not enough to just select multiple bones and then drag this like that. Before clicking and dragging, you have to hold Alt first. And then when you do that, it will affect multiple bones. So basically what I'm going to do is select both of these bones right here. And I know I want them to pivot kind of where the Z axis is right now. What I'm going to do is just hit 7 to look from the top. And with both of those selected, I'm going to hit Alt and change the roll value so that the Z is kind of pointing towards the toe. I want to do the same thing for our foot right here. So I want it to pivot along this way, and I want the toe to also pivot that way. So I'm just going to hit 1 to look from the front and just roll both of these like that. And I'll tweak this one a little too. So now those are both flat along the x-axis like that. These ones look good. Let's see, that one should be pointing this way. So I'm just going to select all of these bones right here and the hand bone too. Hit Alt and rotate all of these like that. So the X is facing us. So now it should be easy enough to just hop into pose mode. And I know that when I rotate these on the x-axis, they're all going to rotate the way I expect, like that. So next I'm going to run through and just name all of these bones that we created. This isn't something that is absolutely necessary once again, but I like to do it for clarity. So to name the bones, you can just select your bone and you can go over to this bone button right here, bone properties, and you can change the name up here. You can also do it in the outliner down here. I don't really recommend doing it this way, but you can do it over there. The way I like to do it is by selecting the bone and hitting F2, and then this name box pops up and you can just name your bone right there and hit enter. Okay, so I'm just gonna time lapse through this part while I name all the bones. And next thing we're going to do is make all of our controller bones and set up our IK constraints. Basically what you need to know is there are two types of bones that we're making right now. We have deforming bones, like all of these ones that are going to actually be deforming our mesh. And the controller bones aren't going to be deforming our mesh. They're just going to be controlling these other bones to make posing a little easier, okay? And when I say IK, I mean inverse kinematics. By default, everything is set up to work with forward kinematics, which is basically like when you move the parent, the children will move. If you wanted to pose a bending leg, you would have to start with the highest one in the chain you want to move, like that, and move down one at a time, like this. What IK lets you do is start with a child and kind of designate a certain amount of parent bones to move along with it. So it's a situation where a child bone can affect its parents, okay? It kind of goes backwards. Okay, so we can start setting up our IK. Just make sure you're in edit mode for this. And the first thing we're going to do right here is I'm just going to extend a bone out like that. And you want to disconnect this bone with Alt-P and clear parent, okay? And now you can move this anywhere you want. I am going to leave it in the same spot right here. And I'm going to rename that IK.leg. And this is going to be the IK controller for our leg. Next, we need a target bone for our leg. So I'm going to select the knee right here and extrude on the y-axis also. Alt-P, clear parent. And I'm going to rename that target.leg. And basically what this target bone does, it lets us control where the knee is pointing, okay? I am actually going to move this one towards the tip of the toe because that is the direction we're going to want our knee to point. So we're going to do the same thing for the arm now. So you can just select this wrist right here, extrude on the y-axis, Alt-P, clear parent, and I'm going to rename this ik.arm. Select the elbow, and when the elbow bends, it's going to be pointing down here. So I'm going to extrude that on the z-axis, Alt-P, clear parent, and I'm just going to drag it down right there. And I'm also going to rename it target.arm. So the way I've been doing this is just one method. There are many ways you could set this up, okay? And in a future tutorial, I will go over a few more options for more advanced IK rigs. So the only other controller bone I would like to add is a root bone. And so I'm gonna hit Shift A. It should just appear at your 3D cursor right there. And I'm just gonna open up the N side panel and change the length of this so it's a little smaller. And I'm also going to rotate this using active element. I'm gonna rotate that negative 90 degrees like that. And I'm also going to reset the roll. Basically, the idea behind the root bone is it's something for all of our bones to be parented to, so that when we move the root bone, all of the other bones will follow it. So you can select all of the bones that aren't parented to anything. So that's going to be all of our controller bones, so the targets and the IK bones. And also this spine bone right here, which is the top of the bone chain for all of our deforming bones. So we can select that too, and then select the root last, Control P, and keep offset. And this is helpful for if you want to rotate the entire body, or if you want to make your character jump, things like that. So next what I'm going to do is set up the IK constraints. So to do that, you want to go into pose mode like that. So one way to set this up is by selecting the first in your IK chain. In this case, it would be our calf. And you can go over here to bone constraint properties and add in a inverse kinematics constraint right here. And then you're going to have to choose the target, which would be our IK, and the pole target, which would be the target. But instead of doing that, I'm going to show you a different way, which is a little quicker. Basically, you select your IK controller, and then you select the first in the chain, which is the calf, and then you hit Shift I. And that's the shortcut to add an IK constraint. And when you do that, it'll automatically put in that IK controller bone right here. And then you just have to select the pole target, which would be Armature. And then you can just type in target and choose leg right there. And if we try to move this IK controller bone, it's, this will happen. And the reason that is because when you select that calf bone, the yellow one, you can see right here our chain length is set to 0. And when we change that to a different number, like 1 or 2, now our skeleton will look more normal. And you can see the foot now is pointing a different direction, and that is because of the target bone right here. So we have to change the pole angle right here until it's pointing at our target bone for the knee. So we can just rotate this right here until it's pointing like that. Could just be set to 90, I guess. And so the way you can think about chain length is how many bones you want to be affected. So you can see when I move this, 2 bones, these 2 bones are the ones that are being affected. If I change this to 1, it will only be this single bone right here, and it'll pretty much just point towards our IK controller like that. You could, if you wanted to, set it higher, and then it will try to control this bone right here. You can see when we do that, it doesn't really work the way we want it to. Unless you have more than 2 bones in your leg, I recommend just setting this to 2. So we can do the same thing for our arm now. So you can just select the IK controller and then the forearm right here, hit Shift I. And so you can see when we move it now, it's going to move a lot more than we want. So you can set the chain to 2 like that. So it's only moving these 2 bones right here. So now I am going to move this up like that. You can see by default it's actually it's bending in the right direction, but I want to be able to move this and have that control where the elbow is pointing. So I'm going to select this bone again, pole target, armature, type in target, arm right there. And again, we're going to have to rotate this. So I think that should be -90. And now when we move this, the elbow will point at it. So I just broke the rig a little to explain a common problem that you might run into, where when you actually rotate this to be pointing towards your target, your hand might be backwards. What you're going to want to do is just go into edit mode and just take your elbow and make it so that it's pointing very slightly towards your target like that. And basically this is just a situation where if your bones are pointing this way, it's not really going to act properly when you try to set up the target. So you just want to make sure there is a slight bend in the natural direction that you want. It doesn't have to be a lot. So now when we go back in here and change the pole angle once again to -90, you can see that the hand is in the correct direction. And if you move your bones and you want to reset them, you can just hit A to select everything, and then Alt-G to clear the pose, Alt-R to clear rotation, and Alt-S to clear the scale, okay? And it'll just go back to normal. I like to be able to select this foot, and when I rotate that, I like the knee to point in the direction of the foot. So an easy way to do that is to go into edit mode, select the target bone right here for the leg, and then select the foot and parent it with keep offset like that. Now back in pose mode, you can see when I rotate this, first of all, it's not working the way we want, okay? And the reason for that is because the foot bone is inheriting the rotation of its parent, which is the calf. So we can just select our foot bone right here, go over to bone properties, relations, and then turn off inherit rotation. In some other rigging tutorials, they might tell you that you should never turn this off. And I would say that that's probably good advice in most situations. But if you're just trying to rig something quickly, you're making something pretty simple, I think it's completely fine to turn off inherit rotation. Basically what that does, if we move this down now, the foot is not going to move at all. And if we have it on, you can see it's rotating with the calf bone. Now when I rotate the foot, the knee will point in the same direction as the toe. If you wanted, you could also do that for this bone right here, and that'll make it so when you rotate this bottom spine bone, the top one stays straight like that. You could also do this for the head, so the head is always level, things like that. Okay, so we're almost ready to flip all of our bones to the other side, but before we do that, I want to take all of the bones that aren't in the center and give them a suffix. So in this case, I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm just going to select everything that's on the left side of our character. So I have everything on the left side selected now, and this is where that add-on that I mentioned in the beginning is going to come in handy. The add-on is called the Simple Renaming Panel, and this will let you rename a bunch of bones at once. And this is a free add-on, and I'll put a link for it in the description So basically with all of those selected, you can change the target from object to bone like that. And then down here, you want to type in period L because this is the left side of our character. And with all those selected, you just hit add suffix. And now you can see there's a period and an L. The L stands for left. So now that we have that, you can select everything and then right click and choose Symmetrize right here. And that is going to look for all of the bones that end with a .L or a .R and just flip them to the other side. So yeah, you can see how this one now is target.arm.L and this one is target.arm.R. So renaming all your bones like this might seem kind of weird, but it actually helps you a lot when you get to posing, and I'll talk about that a little more later. If we select our target bone right here and go over to this bone properties tab, you can see that it's set to deform right here. This has a check. And that means when we parent our mesh to the armature, it's going to look for all of the bones that have this turned on, and it's going to try to assign weights based on that. So what we can do is we can go to each of our bones and turn these off individually like that, or we can just shift select all of our controller bones. And when you have all of those selected, you can hit F3 and just search deform, armature bone settings, deform like that, and change this from toggle to disable. And now you can see all of those are disabled right here. Now I'm going to go back into object mode right here, and we can start parenting our mesh to the armature. So I'm going to select the body right here, shift select the armature, Control P, and choose with automatic weights. And now if we select our armature and go into pose mode, you can see that the body is parented and is moving along with our armature like that. But our, everything else is not following because those are different objects. So I'm just going to reset that, go back into object mode, and we can do the same thing for our shoes with automatic weights. Same for the vest, we can select that, then the armature, Control P, automatic weights. And for the head, we're going to do something slightly different because we only want the head to follow this one head bone. So I'm going to select the head, the eyes, eyelids, and the hat, then shift select the armature, Control Tab to go into pose mode, and just make sure the only bone that's selected in pose mode is the head, and we can hit Control P. And instead of with automatic weights, we're going to choose bone, and that's just going to make it so that it's all of those objects are only parented to this one bone like that, and it just kind of ignores all of the other ones. So just to make posing a little more clear, we can clear up some of this mess, go over to the object data properties. I'm going to turn off names, and I'm going to change octahedral to stick just to make our bones look a little different. They're not as intrusive. And we can just play around with our armature to see what is broken and what looks good. So first thing I notice is that when we move our leg, the vest is also moving, and I don't really like the way it's doing that, so I might fix that with weight painting. Another thing is if we move our character down, you can see the heel is lifting up like that. And so I'll also fix that with weight painting. Another thing that we could fix is you can see when we move the arm, the collar right here is moving like that. Let's reset this and talk a little more about weight painting. To do that, go back into object mode up here. You can hit Control Tab to go into weight paint right here, or you can change that up here. So now we're in weight paint mode, and if you go over to object data properties, you can see we have all of these vertex groups right here. And these were created automatically when we parented the vest to our armature with automatic weights. And basically there should be one vertex group for each of the deforming bones. And if we click through these, you can see different colors appearing, and they're basically displaying the weights associated with the bone that you're selecting. So this would be the second spine bone, which I know is right here. The first one is right here. Blue would be no influence at all. Red would be complete influence, and anywhere in between is just partial, okay? And you would think that maybe you could just select the bones, just click them to select them, but you can't do it that way. You would have to just go through here to find the bone. There is one easier way though. And so if you go up to edit right here, you can see lock object modes. This is turned on, and it should be turned on by default, but you can turn it off. And what this lets you do is switch between different objects more easily. So right now we have our vest selected, but we can select our armature now. with control and left click like that. And it'll just automatically switch us over to our armature, and it's in object mode. And if we click on our vest again, you can see it switches back over to our vest, but we're still in weight paint mode. So that's what it does. It makes it so that you don't really have to switch back into object mode like that. So yeah, I'm going to control click our armature and change this to pose mode. So I changed it to pose mode up here, and then we can just select our vest again. And I just left clicked it. But if that doesn't work for you, you can also select your vest over here like that. So now that we're in pose mode for our armature and weight paint for our vest right here, it will actually let you select bones. I can just control click the thigh bone right here and it will display the weight. It will also allow you to pose while you're in weight paint mode. So I can just control click this bone right here and shift click that other controller bone. And I can just move both of the legs up with G. So I can just control click the thigh right there. And up here, you have active tool settings like that. And you can just change your weights over here that you're painting on. So if I start painting, you can see that it's adding weights, and I don't want to do that. I want to take weights away from this bone. So we can turn the weight all the way to 0 and we can start painting. But what I want to do is make sure that when I paint this side, the other side is affected also. So to do that, we have this symmetry option, and the one you would want is vertex group X. You could also mirror it with X like that. Vertex group X, I believe what it does, you can see this has .L next to it. So I think what it does is it looks for the one that says .R, so thigh.R, and will apply the same weights to it like that. I believe that's how it works. We also have this other option that I like to use called auto normalize. So I think what auto normalize does is it kind of looks for two bones that are sharing influence over the same mesh like that. So you can see that the thigh bone and the spine right here, they both kind of share influence over this spot. And it makes it so that if I was to add influence here, it would take influence away over here like that. And so it should make it so that two bones can never have full influence over the same thing. So I like to turn that on also. So I can just select our thigh now, and once again make sure weight is down all the way and strength is up, and you can just start painting over here like that, and you can see it's affecting the other side too now. You also have these other options over here. You can get those by hitting T in the viewport. Another one I know people like to use is smear or gradient. There is a shortcut for gradient. If you're just using the draw brush right here, you can hold Alt and then left click like that. Not sure why, but sometimes it doesn't mirror to the other side when using the gradient that way. So I just like to control click over and do the same thing on the other side like that. And you can see now that the thigh isn't moving our vest, so that's good. Next, we're going to do the same thing for the shoes. So I'm just going to select our hip right here and move that down so that our heels pop up right here. And then I'm going to control click to select the shoes and switch into weight paint right here. And we can just select this foot bone right there. And once again, I want to make sure auto normalize is on, vertex group X, and I'm also just going to turn this on too. And then we can just start painting, but you can see it's going to be taking weights away like that. So I just want to turn the weight all the way up like that. And we can just start painting on our heel now like this until it snaps to the ground. And if you want a partial weight that's not just 0 or 1, you could either change the weight to something in between, but what I like to do is change the strength to something like 0.25 or something like that. So you can do that for spots like this, and it'll just be more gradual like that. And you can see now that our heels are staying on the ground the way we want. So I'm gonna go back to the vest now and just fix up our collar real quick by selecting this bone right here. And now it's not moving it, so that's good. And when you're done weight painting, you should just turn lock object modes back on like that. So now we have our character successfully rigged. Turn off wireframe, and if you want to, you can turn off simplify too, but it might run a little slower in the viewport. So I'm going to leave it on, but I'm just going to turn it up very slightly. And I'm also going to go into look dev mode so I can see our character a little better. And I'm just going to explain a few posing tips for you. So you just want to select your armature and go into pose mode. So the first posing tip I would like to talk about is good for things like fingers. So if you select all of the bones in one finger and you want to make them curl like they're curling into a fist, it's a lot easier if you switch to individual origins for the pivot point. And I just got there by hitting period but you can also do that up here, I believe. And now when I rotate that on the local x-axis with R and then X twice, you can see it will kind of curl like that. And this is useful for making fists really quickly. You can just select all of the bones like that, all of the finger bones right here, and just R, X twice, and just curl your hand like that. And that seems to only work if you're in individual origins. You could also do this for the spine or things like that too. Another thing is that if you have all of your bones named correctly, like we did, where they have the .L and the .R, it will allow you to flip a pose. So I'll just go through and pose my character in like an asymmetrical way. To flip the pose, you can just hit A to select everything, Control C, and that will copy the pose. And you can hit Control V to paste a pose if you want the same pose on like a different frame or something like that. But you can hit Control Shift V, and that will flip your pose like that. So now we have our pasted pose and our flipped pose. I could go to frame 0 and insert a keyframe for this. The same thing at 40, like that. And on 20, paste the flipped pose right here. And obviously this is only like 3 different keyframes, so it's very simple. But in like no time at all, I made this very simple dance. And if you would like more like quick animation tips for things like this, like if you just want a video about like how to make your character dance or something like that, let me know in the comments because I think that could be a really fun video. I guess another quick tip is that if you plan on rotating your entire character's body, you could just move your root bone like this. So this would allow you basically to move the root bone if you want to make your character do something like jump, or if you wanted to rotate their entire body to make them do like push-ups or things like that. And this is one reason also why people say you should never turn off inherit rotation, is because now it won't inherit the rotation of the root bone properly. If you don't want to turn this off, that's definitely something I'll talk about more in a future tutorial. All right, I think this is where we'll stop for now. In the next rigging video, I'll talk about how to make an advanced foot rig that can pivot from different spots. I've been doing a lot of experimenting with rigging concepts, so the next one should be fun. Subscribe if you don't want to miss that. I also updated my free node groups, and you can find those on Gumroad, along with a bunch of other stuff. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.